Scientists from around the world are calling for an immediate halt to gene editing of humans. This is on Nation and State. It's authored by Derek Bowes via The Mind Unleashed. Scientists and ethicists from around the world are warning of the consequences of failing to implement a temporary global halt on gene editing of human eggs, embryos, and sperm. In a letter to the journal Nature, 18 scientists and ethicists from 7 countries called for a global moratorium on the type of gene editing that can result in genetically altered babies. The letter was prompted by a 2018 announcement by the Chinese scientists declaring the birth of the world's first gene-edited twin babies. And we all remember that. There were 2 twin girls. The 18 signatories of this call include scientists and ethicists who are citizens of 7 countries. Many of us have been involved in the gene editing field by developing and applying the technology, organizing and speaking at international summits, serving on national advisory committees, and studying the ethical issues raised, they said. Fears of designer babies, quote unquote, have been on the rise in the last decade as scientists move closer to producing embryos which have been genetically modified to produce children with a specific, desirable characteristic. This vision was once the exclusive domain of Hollywood movies like Gattaca, but now a future where parents are able to pick and choose exactly how their child's genes express themselves is eerily close. Specifically, the group is calling for a moratorium on germline cells, in this case egg or sperm cells, that can then be inherited and could have permanent and possible harmful effects on the human species. Quote, to begin with, there should be a fixed period during which no clinical uses of germline editing whatsoever are allowed. This is what the scientists wrote. As well as allowing for discussions about the technical, scientific, medical, societal, ethical, and moral issues that must be considered before germline editing is permitted, this period would provide time to establish an international framework. From that point on, individual nations that choose their own paths, scientists predict that some nations may choose to continue a moratorium indefinitely or a permanent ban. They also call on any nation that chooses to allow specific applications of germline editing to first give public notice and engage in an international consideration about the wisdom of doing so. The group also calls for a transparent evaluation to determine if germline editing is justified and for a nation to gain a broad societal consensus over the appropriateness of gene editing. The group urges no clinical application of germline editing should be considered unless its long-term biological consequences are sufficiently understood, both for individuals and for the human species. In a separate letter to journal Nature, Dr. Francis Collins, director of the U.S. National Institute of Health, NIH, stated that the NIH strongly agrees that a moratorium should begin immediately and last until nations commit to international rules to determine, quote, whether and under what conditions such research should ever proceed, end quote. And Collins wrote, this is a crucial moment in the history of science. A new technology offers the potential to rewrite the script of human life. We think that human gene editing for reproductive purposes carries very serious consequences, social, ethical, and philosophical and theological. Such great consequences deserve deep reflection, a substantive debate about benefits and risks that provides opportunities for multiple segments of the world's diverse population to take part has not yet happened. Societies, after those deeper discussions, might decide this is a line that should not be crossed. It would be unwise and unethical for the scientific community to foreclose that possibility. In response to both letters, the editors of Nature magazine released an editorial describing their viewpoint. Quote, whether or not a moratorium receives more widespread support, several things need to be done to ensure that germline gene editing studies done for the purpose of research only are on a safe and sensible path, the editors wrote. The editors call for an all-purpose and basic research study using gene editing tools in human embryos to be deposited in an open registry. Certain countries will have tax laws which could be exploited by would-be mavericks, and thus there is a need for global law to prevent the penalized, unacceptable research, the editor states. The right decision on human germline modification can be reached only through frank and open discussion, followed by swift action. With so much at stake, that must happen right now. And the author is by Tyler Durden of Zero Hedge, of course. This is on Nation and State. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.